For centuries, men trembled before an object that no one else could touch. This phrase echoes behind the scenes of the story, as if it were a whisper from another time. The Ark of the Covenant, the vault of the divine presence, the most feared and most sought-after object of biblical faith. It wasn't just a treasure. It was not just a symbol. It was the point where heaven touched earth and where earth could not survive without trembling. The Ark has accompanied wars, opened impossible paths, overthrown enemies, spread terror among nations, sustained the throne of glory, and revealed the holiness of God with such devastating power that not even Israel dared to approach without blood, without purity, without reverence, and then she disappeared. No empire has found it, no archaeologist has unearthed it, no battle brought her back, no king was able to see her again. It is as if the Ark has been swallowed up by history itself, as if God had hidden it with his own hands. But what if she wasn't lost, but stored? What if the world was not prepared for the truth? What if the silence of the Ark is more prophetic than its presence? Because there is a reality that few people talk about. Every time the Ark appears in the Bible, something changes. And when she disappears, something is about to happen. Therefore, his absence is not accidental. It is strategic and maybe prophetic. Today, you'll step into one of the oldest and most sensitive mysteries in biblical history. The whereabouts of the Ark of the Covenant isn't just a theological debate. It's a spiritual map. A map that crosses deserts, sealed caves, secret tunnels, political borders, millennial traditions, and prophecies that have yet to be fulfilled. There are theories, many of them. Some are based on ancient texts, others in accounts preserved by priests, and others in discoveries that were never fully revealed to the public, but they all have something in common. None can erase the feeling that something gigantic is hidden, waiting for the right time. Today, you'll walk through the 5 strongest, most dangerous, and most debated theories about where the Ark of the Covenant is, not as someone looking for an archaeological object, but as someone trying to understand the prophetic movement behind the story. Because the question is not only where is the Ark, the question is why is it still hidden? And the answer, it can change everything you think about the past and about the end times. Now, get ready. The first theory is born in the heart of Africa, where a single man claims to guard the Ark, and he swears that he will never be able to leave her alive. Theory 1. The Ark in Ethiopia. The guardian who never leaves Ethiopia carries one of the oldest, boldest, and most protected traditions about the Ark of the Covenant. It is not a modern theory. It was not born on the internet, and it does not depend on sensationalist documentaries. It has been part of the Ethiopian national identity for more than 2,500 years. According to tradition, the Ark was taken to the country during the reign of King Solomon, through his son with the Queen of Sheba, Menelik I. The priests of Jerusalem would have allowed him to take it, believing that the copy they left behind would be enough. But when they realized that Menelik had taken the real one, it was too late. It's a story that seems unlikely. But what keeps this theory alive is not the narrative itself. It is what exists today in the city of Aksum. Because there is, in Ethiopia, a small chapel surrounded by walls, guarded by numerous gates, and protected by a single man, the guardian of the Ark. A monk, a priest, a figure shrouded in absolute silence. He is the only one who can enter, the only one who can see, the only one who dedicates his entire life to staying there. They say he can't leave, he cannot marry, you can't talk to strangers, he cannot touch the outside world as long as he lives. And when he dies, another is chosen. Another takes his place, another disappears behind the walls, and no one knows what happens inside. But that's just the beginning of the mystery. For generations, explorers have tried to approach the chapel. Some were barred, others managed to reach the gates. One or the other said he felt a presence so strong, so overwhelming, that he recoiled out of fear, even though he saw absolutely nothing. The Ethiopian priests say, "The Ark is here, and that's why we're attacked, ignored, and despised." Satan persecutes what God protects, and there is a history of this. Ethiopia has already won unlikely wars. It has already resisted gigantic empires. It has already survived invasions that seemed inevitable. They attribute everything to the Ark. But this theory has one detail that bothers scholars. No one, neither archaeologist, nor rabbi, nor government, has ever seen the Ark at Axum, and he never speaks. Is it possible that Ethiopia used this mystery to protect something? Perhaps. Is it possible that the object inside is a replica, perhaps? Is it possible that it is the real Ark? The silence of the world. It says a lot. Why do so many nations vie for control of the region? Why does the Vatican monitor every move inside? Why does Israel maintain quiet diplomacy with Axum? Why has no one ever forced access, fear, respect, or true? In the end, there is something that no one can deny. Ethiopia guards tooth and nail an object that it does not want anyone to see, and the whole world respects this decision. But the question remains as an echo. If the Ark is indeed inside, why did God allow it to be hidden so far away? And what does this mean for today's world? You will realize that Ethiopia is just the beginning. The mystery gets even deeper in the next point. If this investigation is waking you up, subscribe to the channel now, activate the bell on the right, share this video, and comment. If the truth is hidden, may God reveal it to me. Theory 2. The Hidden Ark on Mount Nebo. If there is one theory that carries biblical weight, Jewish tradition, and historical silence at the same time, it is this. The Ark of the Covenant may be hidden on Mount Nebo, the same place where God showed Moses the promised land and where he died without entering it. And this theory was not born in the popular imagination. It appears in ancient Jewish documents, in respected apocryphal texts, and in accounts kept by rabbis for centuries. According to an ancient tradition recorded in the book of 2 Maccabees 2:4-8, the prophet Jeremiah, near the Babylonian invasion, received a specific command from God to take the ark and the sacred utensils from the temple and hide them in a secret cave on Mount Nebo. The narrative is straightforward. Jeremiah took some trusted men, went up to the mountain, found a natural cave, and hid the ark. It's sealed so well that no one has ever found their way back. The text says that when they tried to go back and mark the way, they could not find him. And Jeremiah declared, "The place will remain unknown until God gathers his people again." This phrase never left the Jewish world alone. It sounds like a promise. It sounds like prophecy. It sounds like something that hasn't happened yet. And since then, Mount Nebo has become more than a historical site. It became a point of silence, a point of secrecy. Today, Mount Nebo is in Jordan. It is a place visited by pilgrims, archaeologists, and scholars. But there is something strange there. Much of the underground area remains untouched. Nothing was explored in depth. Nothing has been dug deep. Nothing was released for full investigations. Why? There are those who say that it is for political reasons. Others claim that it is historical protection, but many rabbis believe that it is simply because God does not want her to be found. Not yet. Mount Nebo carries curious signs. Several caves have been mapped in the region over the years, but almost all show signs of old sealing. Some have entrances blocked by giant boulders that seem to have been there for centuries. Others have ash patterns identified as burnings from very ancient Jewish rituals, and they all have one thing in common. None, to date, has been officially opened. In 1981, a clandestine group tried to force entry into one of these caves. An unconfirmed report says they simply disappeared. The Jordanian government took control of the area the next day. Everything was surrounded, everything was blocked, and no one ever talked about it again. Coincidence? Exaggeration? Or warning? The Mount Nebo theory has something that others do not. Biblical foundation. Jeremiah, the ark, the flight before the invasion, everything matches the chaotic atmosphere of the time. And if God really wanted to preserve the ark from Babylonian plunder, hiding it in the Jordanian desert would make sense. But there is a detail that chills theologians to this day. The prophecy says that the ark will only appear when God gathers his people again, and many believe that this points to a prophetic period, perhaps already underway. If the ark is buried on Mount Nebo, then it is not lost. She is waiting for God's timing, and that brings us to one of the most dangerous, sensitive, and politically explosive theories of all. A theory that involves secret caves, underground tunnels, and one of the most disputed places on Earth, because the next point might be the most disturbing of all. Theory 3. The Ark. Under the Temple Mount. There is one theory that makes archaeologists tremble, governments remain silent, and the spirit world tremble. It is this: the Ark of the Covenant may be hidden beneath the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. It is not an exaggeration. It's not internet theory. It is one of the most sensitive secrets in history, because if true, its discovery would change world politics, the Jewish faith, Christianity, Islam, and the entire geopolitics of the Middle East in a single day. The Temple Mount is, to this day, the most disputed place on Earth. Digging, investigating, or excavating is virtually impossible. But even so, clues have emerged over the centuries. And they all point to the same place, the underground tunnels below the ancient Temple of Solomon. During the destruction of Jerusalem by the Babylonians, something curious happened. The Bible says that all the utensils of the temple were taken, minus the Ark of the Covenant. It simply disappears from the biblical record, and many scholars believe that this was not an accident. According to accounts preserved in the Talmud and ancient rabbinic texts, the priests knew of secret tunnels and underground chambers built especially to protect sacred objects. Solomon knew that Jerusalem would be attacked in the future, so he would have prepared hidden paths under the temple, and this is where the story gets serious. Several 20th century Jewish explorers claim to have managed to enter some of these tunnels. Unofficial accounts from Israeli soldiers during the Six-Day War, 1967, say that some of them saw closed rooms with covered artifacts and a chamber sealed with ancient stones. None of these reports have been officially confirmed. None were denied either. Why? Because there is an implicit rule in Israel: tampering with the Temple Mount can start a war. Any news involving the discovery of the Ark would be enough to stir entire religions, raise territorial claims, and cause worldwide chaos. But what few know is that there is archaeological evidence that there are indeed underground chambers under the site. The Western Wall tunnels, open to the public today, reveal an immense network of passages, and these tunnels are only the ones that Israel is politically allowed to show. What exists beyond them remains in complete silence. And there's more. In 1982, archaeologist Rabbi Yehuda Getz publicly claimed that his team had found a direct passage to the chambers under Mount Nebo. The government shut everything down in hours. The area was closed, and to this day, no one talks about it. Getz declared shortly before he died, "I know where the Ark is." And he never gave more details. Another element that feeds this theory is the fact that for Jews, the Ark is essential to restore the sacrifice of the temple. And precisely for this reason, many believe that it is already there, just waiting for the right moment to be revealed. If the Ark is really under the Temple Mount, then it is not lost, nor distant, nor forgotten. It is in the place where it has always belonged, at the center of biblical faith, at the exact point where God chose to put his name, and maybe, as well as Mount Nebo. It is waiting for a specific time, a prophetic time, a time of fulfillment, a time that has not yet arrived, but it may be closer than we imagine. And that brings us to the next theory, one of the most surprising and least known, but with impressive historical evidence. The story now takes us to Egypt. Theory 4, the Ark lifted and carried south, the secret route of the priests. Among all the theories about the whereabouts of the Ark of the Covenant, there is one that almost never appears in videos, preaching, or documentaries. Not because it is weak, but because it touches on a part of Israel's history that few know, few study, and almost no one teaches. It is the theory that the Ark was taken by the Jewish priests themselves to Egypt, towards the island of Elephantine in the Nile River. And to understand this possibility, one must enter into a hidden chapter of Jewish history, a chapter that many theologians avoid, but that archaeologists cannot ignore. The Jewish colony forgotten by the world between the 6th and 5th centuries BC, there existed in Egypt a real, historical, fully documented Jewish community, the colony of Elephantine. She is not a myth, it is not theory, it is an archaeological fact. The Elephantine papyri, discovered at the beginning of the 20th century, reveals something extraordinary. There was a Jewish temple there. Yes, a true temple, with priests, sacrifices, and liturgy, all very similar to what existed in Jerusalem. And the question is, why did this colony exist? And why did she have a temple? The answer that most respected archaeologists accept today is simple. Because Jews fled to Egypt during periods of persecution and destruction, especially during the fall of Jerusalem. And who would have led this escape? Priests, men trained in the temple, men who knew the secret ways and knew how to carry sacred objects. The escape that may have changed everything. When Nebuchadnezzar besieged Jerusalem, many priests died, but some fled, and they fled to where Jeremiah had warned, to Egypt. The Bible confirms this flight in Jeremiah 42 and 43. There it is recorded beyond doubt that a group of Jews, led by stubborn men who refused the prophecy, dragged Jeremiah himself into Egypt. They went to Tanis, Migdol, and other regions of the Delta. But before that, some groups had already descended further south, including to the Elephantine region. And this is where the theory becomes unsettling. The priests who fled, what would they have taken? Common objects, clothing, food, or would they have taken that which could never fall into the hands of Babylon, the Ark of the Covenant, the only object that would justify rebuilding a temple on foreign soil? Why Elephantine? Elephantine was a fortified island, easy to defend, hardly reached by invading troops, and with direct access to the interior of Egypt, where Jerusalem could be forgotten. It was a perfect place to hide that which carried the presence of God. The Elephantine papyri show that the priests made sacrifices similar to those of Solomon's temple, but the Ark was never mentioned. And this is precisely what makes the theory alive. Why didn't they mention the Ark? Because if it were there, it could not be mentioned, it could not be exposed, it could not be written, it could only be saved. And there is an even more disturbing detail: the destruction of the Temple of Elephantine in the 5th century BC. The Jewish temple at Elephantine was destroyed by pagan Egyptians, and when that happened, everything disappeared. Relics, objects, utensils, everything disappeared from history, which means only one thing: if the Ark were there, it was moved again. Where to? Nobody knows, and this opens up space for even deeper possibilities. If the Ark passed through Elephantine, it could be hidden in some lost tomb, buried in caves in the Nubian desert, transported further south to Sudan, or taken back to Israel later by secret groups of priests. Each hypothesis is a portal to another mystery, but they all have something in common. The Ark was never captured by enemies. It was never displayed as a trophy. It was never destroyed. She simply continued traveling. And this theory prepares us for the most profound of all. The theory that doesn't just talk about history, but of prophecy, because maybe the Ark wasn't accidentally lost. Perhaps it was removed from the scene by divine order. And this brings us to the point that closes this enigma in a sweeping way. Theory 5. The hidden Ark for the end times. Among all the theories about the whereabouts of the Ark of the Covenant, there is one that does not attempt to explain where it is. But why did she disappear? And this theory, more than historical, is prophetic. It touches on something that the Bible insinuates but never says clearly. She speaks on purpose, timing, of destination. It's the idea that the Ark wasn't lost. It was not stolen. It was not destroyed. She was not buried unintentionally. She was removed from the story by divine order, waiting for a specific moment to reappear. Such a decisive moment. That will change everything. This theory begins with the detail that few realize. In Revelation 11:19, when John sees heaven being opened, he writes, "And the Ark of the Covenant was seen in his temple." It is not a symbolic vision. It is not a metaphor. John sees the Ark, not on earth, but in heaven. And this raises a question that has echoed for centuries. If John saw the Ark in heaven, then was the Ark on earth merely a physical object, or a material reflection of a greater spiritual reality? The Ark has always been a point of connection between the visible and the invisible, between the eternal and the temporal, between God and man. She was the throne of presence, the meeting point, the place where blood touched glory. And maybe that's why, when the time of the Old Covenant ended, the Ark simply left the scene. Not because it lost its value, but because history was entering a new phase, and God, who controls everything, removed it to preserve it. This theory states that the Ark was hidden by God in some inaccessible place, not to be found by the nations, but to be preserved until the time of restitution of all things. Acts 3:21. And that final restoration includes the return of Israel, the prophetic reconstruction, the worldwide awakening, and the day when the Messiah will set his feet on the Mount of Olives. The ark in this view is not an archaeological object. It is a prophetic marker. It appears when God is going to act, and it disappears when God is preparing something greater. In addition, there is something even deeper. The ark never reappeared at any critical period in Israel's history. It did not appear in the restoration of Ezra. It did not appear in the time of Nehemiah. It did not appear in Herod's temple. It did not appear in the time of Jesus. It did not appear in the Roman destruction. It never appeared in the hands of any empire. And this is not an accident. If it had been found by Greeks, Romans, Persians, Muslims, Crusaders, or any kingdom, it would have become a political trophy, a religious weapon, a symbol of domination. God would not deliver something so holy to men full of ambition. Hence, this theory states the ark has not disappeared. It was kept by God, and it will only appear when he wants. And when would that be? The rabbis point to the Messianic era. Christians point to the final signs. Apocalypse scholars point to the great heavenly announcement: the temple of God was opened in heaven. What if the ark appears before that? It will be such an explosive signal that the whole world will tremble. Wherever it is, in sealed caves, in underground tunnels, in a forgotten desert, or beyond what our eyes can see, the Ark of the Covenant remains alive in the enigma of history and in the prophetic clock of the end. Because her silence, it is not forgetfulness. It's waiting, and this wait has an appointment. There are mysteries in the Bible that have not been left to be explained, but to be discerned. The Ark of the Covenant is one of these mysteries. It crosses generations like a luminous shadow, present and absent at the same time, silent and yet speaking, hidden but never forgotten. And perhaps the deepest point is not where she is, but why she remains hidden. Think about it. The Ark was the most sacred object in Israel's history. No army captured it. No nation has exhibited it. No enemy has defeated her. No king boasted that he had taken it as a trophy. She just disappeared, as if it had been taken out of history by the hands of God. And when we look at everything we investigate, Ethiopia, Nebo, Jerusalem, Egypt, and the prophetic theory, each trail points to the same destination: protection. The Ark is the ultimate symbol of presence. And where there is true presence, there is judgment. Where there is judgment, there is holiness. And where there is holiness, the world cannot stand it. This explains why God allowed her to disappear, not out of weakness, not by defeat, but because humanity was no longer prepared to face what the Ark represented. If God allowed the modern world to touch the Ark today, with its irreverence, its idolatry, its politics, and its manipulation, everything would be desecrated. The Ark would have become a spectacle, trophy marketing power weapon, religious tool. Therefore, God removed her from the stage, and he placed it where no human hand could interfere. The Ark is not lost. It is preserved, guarded, separated, protected from man, and protecting man from himself. But here comes the deeper point. The disappearance of the Ark speaks more about us than about it. As Israel turned away, the Ark went out. While the people were corrupted, the Ark disappeared. As the heart moved away, the presence retreated. And that's a spiritual echo for today. Because the biggest question is not, in what cave is the Ark? The biggest question is, why did the glory come out of the earth? The Bible shows an unchanging pattern. When the people returned, the presence returned. When the people repented, the glory returned. When the heart was aligned, the sky responded. So perhaps the ark's whereabouts are linked to a time and not to a place. Perhaps she is expecting not an archaeologist, but a prophetic moment, an alignment, a divine calling, a movement that only God can ignite, because one day the ark will appear again, even if it is in heaven as John saw, even if it is on earth as many rabbis hope. But when it does, it won't be just another archaeological find. It will be a warning, a sound, a sign, a divider of eras. The ark is not silent. She is waiting for the prophetic clock to strike the next hour, and maybe that time is closer than we imagine. But until then, there is a call. What kind of life have you been leading? Are you someone that God's presence could inhabit, or someone before whom the presence would have to withdraw? Because the greatest mystery of the ark is not the ark. It is what it reveals about the human heart. God hid the ark to preserve holiness, but he continues to seek hearts where his presence can rest. And now, the invitation is yours. If this message spoke to you, share it now so that others can wake up too. Subscribe to the channel, activate the bell on the right, and comment, "Lord, restore your presence to me." Because the ark may be hidden, but the presence of God still seeks those who desire it.